In February of 1959, 9 experienced skiers and hikers set out to explore the northern slopes of Otorten Mountain in the Ural Mountains. All of them were well equipped for their journey with plenty of food and supplies to last them the whole trip. But within 2 weeks, something happened that would shock the entire world. The group had set up camp at an elevation of 2,400 meters or 8,000 feet in an area known as Dyatlov Pass, and it was here where things took a turn for the worst. In the morning, the weather was reported to be calm with clear skies, but by the afternoon, a blizzard swept through the area and the temperature dropped dramatically. The next morning, when their frozen tent was cut open, an incredible scene awaited the other campers. Inside the tent were 3 men and 2 women who were completely nude except for their socks. One of the men was lying across the tent with his boots and clothes scattered around the tent and outside on the snow. The other 4 members of the group were missing. As the day went on, they discovered the bodies of 2 more hikers, again completely naked except for their socks. 2 more bodies were found a few days later, all of them showing no signs of trauma that could explain their deaths. One of the most disturbing aspects of this case is that all of the bodies found outside the tent had been stripped of clothing. Several of the bodies also showed signs of significant trauma, including one man whose chest had been completely caved in as if his ribs had been crushed by some sort of heavy object. After finding these remains, the search team decided to return to the tent to look for clues as to what could have caused such horrific injuries. Inside the tent, they found a gas stove and a note written by one of the group members stating that they had run out of food and were going to try and find more. This, along with the lack of clothing that all the bodies were found in, led investigators to believe that the group had been driven insane by hunger and had proceeded to cannibalize one another. However, further evidence would prove this theory to be false. After examining the bodies, forensic experts concluded that none of the bodies showed signs of having been dead for very long, which would have made it impossible for the group to have engaged in cannibalism. Further analysis of the bodies revealed that several of the victims had fatal internal injuries, including one man whose spleen had ruptured. Ruptured spleens are extremely rare and usually only occur as a result of severe blunt force trauma, such as being struck by a vehicle or some other heavy object. As if this wasn't strange enough, the autopsy reports stated that the amount of force required to rupture the man's spleen would have also likely fractured or broken several of his ribs, which would have been immediately fatal. Another hiker had a similarly sized wound on his back, but his injuries were not immediately fatal. However, at some point during the night, his injuries worsened and he began bleeding internally, which eventually led to his death. To make matters even stranger, the tent showed no signs of having been cut from the outside, nor did it show any signs of a struggle. The outside of the tent was also free of footprints, leading investigators to believe that those who had died outside the tent had somehow managed to crawl out without disturbing the snow. To this day, no one is 100% certain what caused these horrific injuries, but there are a few theories. Some believe that the group may have been the victim of a rare meteorological phenomenon known as an atmospheric gravity wave. These waves can cause objects to be lifted and moved over great distances with little to no warning. While this theory seems far-fetched, similar waves have been known to lift and carry away small aircraft, so it is certainly plausible that they could have lifted and carried away these hikers. Another theory is that the group was the victim of an avalanche, which could explain the crushed rib and the lack of clothing. However, an avalanche would have also likely injured the other campers, which would have been visible on their bodies. There was also no evidence of snow in the hikers' hair or on their clothing, which would have been present if they had been caught in an avalanche. To this day, the deaths of these 9 hikers remain a mystery. What do you think happened to them? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.